Hello, hello. My name is LaTecia Yarbrough. This is our iRise experience. I am the founder, CEO of iRise Wellness, and we have lovely Jordan. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. What's up, everybody? My name is Jordan Brooks, he, him, his. I am currently the Director of Equity Inclusion at Iowa State University. Through iRise, though, I'm the treasurer, which has been dope. I've been on the board for about a couple months now, right? Like maybe 4 months. Well, I
Yeah.
guess I've been officially on the board a month, had my
Yeah.
trial run, right, for a couple things. But also on the back end or in the background, I've been doing a lot of work as far as our social media kind of presence in that way. So it's been cool to be on the back end, and it's funny to be now talking right and in front. I'm
Yes.
like,
Definitely.
I've been in the shadows doing my thing, and now here we are
But you've
having
been
this
doing great work
conversation.
too. Great work. Great
Nah,
work. I really
much love.
appreciate it.
I appreciate
The topic of today is being a Black educator. I work in higher education, meaning I work for colleges and universities across the globe. That's higher ed. And we talk about most of the time, what does it mean to be a Black educator?
it.
Um, Jordan works at Iowa State. I work at UC Santa Cruz. And there's a lot of different experiences and nuances that we have to talk about our experience. So, Jordan, I asked you, like, what does it mean to be a Black educator?
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, the first thing that happens when you think of yourself as a Black educator is to think about your own educational experience. You have to, I think it's important for you to go back of like, what was even preschool like for me, if I can remember that far, and what have I experienced mentally, physically, right, spiritually, as I've gone through an educational system. And then from there, when you now, after you've done that reflection, right, and then you go, what does it mean for me to be a Black educator? I think what that comes to is like, I'm responsible for the care of our young people. I'm responsible for the sick, like the protection of our future, right? And I think that's really what it comes down to, right? Through education, for me, it's about what's that? How can we cultivate creativity? How can we cultivate community and care? And so, as a Black educator, knowing the state that we're in, um, there's just like this, I think, a strong responsibility to seeing that through. That's kind of how I think about it. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, like, never thought about taking it back. Like, what does it mean? Because I'd be like, dang, I'm old to these students. Like, none of my experiences, like, do they really matter anymore?
Oh,
Um, but like, if I thought back and I'm like, okay, this is what I needed. Like, I just needed to be seen as a student. I just needed for someone to understand my experience and hear me out, and making space for our students to do that, I think is important. But there's a lot of times where we don't have the resources to create space like that for students. There's excuses of budget cuts and space capacities, and working in California, like housing is an issue,
yeah,
space is
that's
an
real.
issue, like so yeah, I think what I needed growing up and being in education is someone to really see me and to see my experiences. And being a Black educator, I think for students, it's challenging, but it's also rewarding, because you get like I can think about last week. I just had one of my students send me a voice message. She was like, I was gonna text you, but I thought a voice message would be better." And I'm like, old me, don't we
Right.
didn't know what voice messages was, right? But they were like, I just got into med school. I said, what? And,
Right. That's
and
beautiful.
those are the experience I live for. And it was you know, I don't do it for a thank you, but I really enjoy those experiences.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see the people who you've interacted with win, right? Like, I,
Absolutely.
I literally just got off a phone call with an old student of mine from back in my first professional position in higher ed a couple of days ago. And I'm like, I was about to tear up and stuff talking to this homie. I'm like, man, I'm just happy where you've gotten to, bro. And I'm just happy that you even thought to call me and let me know. So no, I feel you. That's big. There's something you mentioned about being seen in school, and it made me think. I feel like we're gonna have, as we go on in this conversation, we'll have some interesting back and forth. But I think about the balance between being seen in the way that you mean, of like recognizing as a person my wholeness, and then being watched. And I'm thinking of the surveillance that happened to me, especially as a little Black boy in a predominantly white Catholic grade school, K through 12, right? And so I'm like, or K through 8. Just so that balance between being watched or observed or surveilled, right? And then being seen, being understood, being nurtured, right? That happens in education is just, that was something that was popping up in my head for me as you were talking about being seen.
And I just think about, what is the fine line as a Black educator to be at the table in some of those decisions to make sure that those things don't happen, right? And oftentimes we could be the only one in those spaces having those conversations, right? And on top of that, we have to be the representation for our entire community. And if we choose not that day or not that conversation, then what happens? What battle do we have to, cross later down the road? Who loses out on an opportunity when we don't speak up?
Yeah, that's real.
I think about all that.
Yeah, that's real, right? And I think I'm like, when you said being the only one and speaking up and doing some reflecting, I'm like, the first Black person, and I would almost venture to say the first person of color, first time I saw a person of color in a formal school setting was ninth grade, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
It was ninth grade. Now, right, like daycare, church, community centers, cool, but like the formal, get this education moved through the grade setting, not until ninth grade, my Spanish teacher, Miss Crumbly, was like the first Black person I saw in school. Like, we do that? It was just like, hold up, what? I mean, and even of course, like I knew there were teachers at other schools, because there's an active decision to send your kid, I think, to a Catholic school.
And that makes me think about like how important is representation for our students? Like, if you're first experiencing, a Black professional in this educational setting, not until ninth grade, you half of your life, right?
Yeah, right.
That's half of my life.
Yeah,
I mean, we talk about age, but so like that's half of my life. But like, I'm trying to think.
But see, that's where the balance comes in, because there's a couple things at play, right? And like I said, formal school setting was one thing. I knew of other Black teachers, and maybe one of the benefit for me though was I saw those Black teachers in some of those other informal spaces, and so maybe they were still teaching and grooming me in those ways. I think at the Martin Luther King Center or at the JFK Center, Booker T. Washington Center types of spaces, right? But I didn't have that until like third grade, maybe. And there was definitely a moment, and my dad and my mom made a conscious decision of like, we can't just only have you in your school.
Yeah.
You've got to go to the MLK Center this summer, right? It was like no, we're seeing some things happen. We're seeing how things are happening around you. No, you're going here. And so I think that's where I got that balance. But the representation is big when you're in school, because I think I took school differently once I had her too. Right? Like, I was intelligent. I goofed off. I was myself, right? But I think there was a thing like when I got with her and she like just kept it real with me, like, there's a responsibility that comes with this education. It's not just about you learning. It's about you learning and doing something for the people next to you, for the people who come behind you. And I was like, a word? Like, nobody ever mentioned school like that to me. I was like, I need to pass this test so I can move on, get up out of here, get them off me, right? Like, school was a get out situation. School was never a go do this to do something else situation for me.
it almost sounds like a burden that,
School's a burden.
Black students have to carry. Like
Yeah.
they're not just representing themselves. And how do we as Black educators provide a space to say it's okay to fail? It's okay to not know the answer. It's okay that, that didn't work out the way it's supposed to work out, and making those transitions and adapting and different things like that. I feel like at a college campus, that's where we come in,
Mhm.
because a lot of that learning, like you said, comes from outside of the classroom.
Yeah.
A lot of that acknowledging about who you are and how you show up in the world happens outside of that classroom.
Yeah. No, that's real. That's real. I remember, did you have like when you got to college, was there like a Black women's group or just like a Black whatever group that was
Yeah,
with faculty and staff?
with faculty and staff.
Okay. Yeah, I had one of those too.
I had one of those, and I think that was the first time I was in a space with other Black women,
Hmm.
like, excellent Black excellence. In
Yeah.
the definitions of Black excellence, I went to an undergrad where we had a bunch of Black administrators and
Mm.
faculty. I was thankful and I was lucky in that.
Yeah.
Um, and we had conversations what it meant to walk through the world as a Black woman.
Hmm.
What are
Hmm.
some of the things that throughout history were we forgotten about or overlooked, or not being, like you talked about, being cared for or
Right.
being, protected in a way.
Right.
So I think that was the first time in college where I actually was in a space like that.
Hmm.
I can't think of any other time. I had a Black track coach.
Yeah.
I'm not
All.
thinking, I'm thinking about, like, I had a Black basketball coach, but
Yeah.
I didn't have any I don't remember having any Black teachers.
No. Okay. So similar. You didn't have any Black teachers
Yeah,
in elementary school. Okay.
I don't remember. I had, I had Latin teachers, I had white teachers. I don't remember ever having a Black teacher.
Yeah.
Like when you were talking about it, like yeah, no, through my entire K through 12.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, our like I said, my Spanish teacher, my ninth grade year, Black woman, and then Miss Johnson was the vice principal of the school. And between the two of them, and then rest in peace, Miss Hughes, our dance teacher. Those were the three black the three Black women in my school. Give it
Yeah.
up to my sisters, right? Is the three Black women in my school who was like, sir, get your life right, right?
Mosey on.
Yes, right, right. Let's do this thing. And then college, we had our group brother to brother. And what happened, my timing was just perfect. Then we had hired a bunch of new Black faculty on campus maybe the year prior to me coming.
Mhm.
And so they had got their, they're used to the campus. And then I come in with my freshman class and they're like, we're gonna start this thing called brother to brother and sister circle. And so there's the sister circle, brother to brother. And
I
I
love that.
remember we had like an econ faculty, two psychology faculty, and I went and studied psychology, right? So it's like all those little pieces of, wait,
Yeah.
you did what? You studied what? Okay. This PhD doctoral thing? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'll
Maybe,
see. We'll
maybe,
see. We'll
maybe we'll
see.
think about that.
We'll see.
Maybe think about that.
Yeah, don't hold your breath, but we'll see.
Ah, but I also think, like, I want to shift gears and talk about
Mhm.
what does it mean to be whole and Black as a
Mm,
Black educator, like you as a person. Like
yeah.
we spent a lot of time talking about our experience as students and how to
Mhm.
care for them and things like that and our experience. But how do you care for yourself in this moment in time now?
Yeah. I think the first real moment that made me question that was I was working at Georgia Southern. I tell this story a lot because it's related to my business, No Self, my art
Mhm.
business. It's all around that time of Sandra Bland and all these other things that have gone on. We out, we protesting, we moving, we shaking. I'm a resident director, so I'm responsible for training. I'm responsible for one-on-ones with my staff and helping them navigate these conversations and dealing with all these things and with administration. And I'm in a one-on-one with one of my students, and we kind of closing up, and he's like, hold up. We just spent 40 minutes talking about me. Jordan, how do you feel right now? He's like, what's going on with you? Where are you at with all this? He's like, because your session on race was dope. Beautiful. Your session on such and such was dope. But honestly, if you're willing to undo being my resident director, how you feel, bro? And I was like, you're like, whole chest starts caving in, like, right. And I was like, honestly, I don't even know that I could tell you. So we grabbed the table, we grabbed some paint, we grabbed some brushes, and we sat out in our lobby and we painted and talked and drew until I was able to feel it. And when I was like, oh, this is where I'm at, bro. I'm at this space where, like, I'm pissed off. I'm this. I don't want to have these conversations. I don't even know that I can work in housing when all this is going on. And I'm sitting here dealing with roommate conflicts. Forget your roommate conflict, right? Like, all this is happening in my head. And I'm like, yeah, I think I gotta get out of housing. It's time for me to go into multicultural because I had this conversation where my student was like, yo, what's up with you? How you feeling? So really my creativity, my art, and being true to that, being true to it is what helps me, honestly. The other side is exercise.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't be out here wilding out. But I can put 315 on my back and squat, right? I can put yeah, I can do stuff like that and, you know, get whatever aggression or feeling out that I have. But then also community, I would say communities and spaces like this, right? Communities that I found with other folks and connecting has really been the way that I've been able to take care of myself. I always try to find folks that I can fellowship with. That's always a thing for me, is who can I be authentic and fellowship with.
Yeah.
How about you? What's up?
Man, as you were talking, like I'm thinking about all the different things. I think my experience, the first time where I really had to, I think I've never ever actually said this out loud.
Breaking news.
So when I went to, I'm originally from California. We call ourselves, the liberal state, but we're a bunch of passive regressive racism. That's basically what it is, and microaggressions. But where I've actually really experienced, like real racism and prejudice and things like that is in grad school. So I went from California and went to Mississippi, and it was a culture shock.
Yeah.
We were dealing with things and having conversations. I'm like, what are we back 20 years ago? Like, what's going on? It's the first time I went to therapy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
First time that I said, okay, I know I'm not crazy. Like this is not okay. Like I'm experiencing this. KKK had permission to give out flyers on campus. Like, what?
Whoa. Yeah,
What?
that's deep. That's deep. What?
And I'm like, yo, this is crazy. I've never experienced anything like it.
Yeah.
And this is people's norm. This is
Right, like they're desensitized to it.
yeah, this is people's norm. Like, it was some of my first for me, like the first time I went to therapy, the first time I experienced real racism, the first time where I went to church, but was going to church faithfully, like consistently,
Mm-hmm.
in a church that had a white pastor and had a mixed community, and it was interesting. But I think the first time where like I said that I needed to make sure that I was taken care of was after the president was elected, Donald Trump, that president was elected, and we had a mass clown that was driving a red truck on campus with a Confederate flag that was terrorizing our students, like real life terrorizing our students. My students were scared. I didn't know, how can you help people when you scared too?
Scared
Like
too.
I was scared.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally, I would cry at night in my room
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like I couldn't do that in front of anyone else, in front of my students, because I was caring for them, in front of, other administrators and my peers and different things like that, because this was their norm. Like I probably the clown on campus terrorizing student wasn't the norm, but like the
Gotcha, but no,
active
the
racism and
yeah,
things
yeah,
like
yeah.
that was like their norm. And I was scared. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the first time that I was ever scared of being Black,
Yeah.
because I have I'm pretty palatable to white people. I'm light-skinned Black woman. People find me okay most of the time. But in the South, I really understood that I was real Black. Like I was really Black.
Yeah.
And my experience, what I was going through, I was scared, and I was literally going to leave grad
Mm-hmm.
school.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to leave. I was like, I can't do this no more. I'm gonna go back. Like, yeah.
When you ask the question of, well, rewind first, right? That's that's traumatizing. That's real. Like really, that is traumatizing and that's deep, in many ways. But I'm happy that you were going to therapy and things, right? To
Mhm.
kind of deal with that. And that's where it brought what was making me think about that. I was like, I was having dreams of things popping off on campus, and I would have to like defend my students, like my Black
Mm.
students, or be out here like homies acting out, and we in the streets of campus like brawling, right? And I'm like, this is not healthy. Like, like I would tell my wife, and she's like, Jordan, you gotta work on that. Like you just can't be out here having dreams about like so and so is saying something, acting wild, and like you
Yeah.
like call the crew, let's go. Like it can't it can't be that way. And even though I'm like joking about it, right? Like what that makes me think about though is when we ask that question of like, what does it mean to be a Black educator? I think there's a part of what comes with being a Black educator is all the stuff that's outside of the content that
Yeah.
you're either sharing with your students or that's outside of the learning experience that you're trying to create with them. To even be in the position as an educator comes with all this other baggage and things as well too, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, talking about your own safety, talking about your security, talking about the just the politics and things and stuff of sometimes what you have to deal with, right? To be able to even one get into the educator role, maintain it and moving and things through it to actually do the work of educating your students.
Yeah.
Like, why is that a discussion? Like, why do we have to fight over this, right? And that's just on the light end of it. And then there's the legitimate threats and
Yeah.
other people not being impacted by those threats in the way that you are. For them, it can be basically a tabletop exercise, right? And for you, you're
Yeah.
like, do I actually walk across campus to my office today? Right? Like, is that what I'm going to do? And how do I not walk across campus to my office, but tell my students to go do rounds, right? In this building,
Right.
to go be a student leader and
Go
create
be a
those.
student, go to class. Like
Right,
how,
right.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's a fine line, but it was my first time going to therapy. I think me finding a therapist and using on-campus therapy, because I you could use it as a grad student. I didn't know that that was a thing. So that was new to me. And then I learned something in the moment of having a therapist is, yeah, I still worked out. I still went to the gym. I probably shouldn't have ran it in the middle of the night as a Black person, but that, in
Yeah.
smack dab Mississippi, but you
Yeah.
know, um, but there was people that cared for me at that institution.
Very true.
Um,
That's good.
I appreciate my experience. I appreciate you know, the community that I built there,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't all bad, right?
Right.
Um, but I think about through the aspect of my therapy
Mm-hmm.
through there, I learned that I needed to find a Black therapist because this white woman just didn't understand.
What you were saying. Yeah. Very
Right?
true.
She could hear me and like she took notes, but she just didn't get it. Like she
Imagine you said she took notes. The comprehension was happening.
yeah. She just didn't get it. And the moment I knew that I have found the right therapist, because I did my work, I did my homework.
Yeah.
I found a Black male therapist
Yeah.
um in the last like couple years. And he dope as shit. Like, so I'm having this conversation to him and he said, it sounds like Love Jones. And I said, like,
References.
you get
You
it.
know, black folks love a reference.
Yeah.
Like just love a reference. Come
I
on,
said,
we gonna
oh,
get
you
it.
get it. I said, I didn't even have to explain it to you. You
I
was
know.
already
I know
there.
exactly how it's going to play out. I saw the movie, got it on VHS. Let's go. Keep talking to me.
Keep coming. And that was that was the perfect moment, and the most important thing where I thought about being a Black educator is finding a good therapist,
Mm,
because the way that you're pouring into these students and caring for these students, you need someone to take care of you and pour into
that's
you.
true.
And
That's
a
real.
lot of times, yes, our village have our back, but
Hmm.
our village also be going through stuff too,
Very true.
right?
Very true.
And sometimes a good therapist, someone that understands you, is something that I found that really helped me as a Black educator.
Well, that's powerful. Yeah, no, I feel you. I mean, I definitely started going to therapy too. Once I mean, right, I was like, I need to make the switch from housing to intercultural, multicultural affairs. And then I got me a therapist
Mm-hmm.
to deal with all the things as well too. So it's definitely has been important for me as well. Another one of those things too is, and like you said, you mentioned village, and it made me go like, oh, I can't not acknowledge that when I was in grad school, my two Black peers,
Mm-hmm.
they were the truth. My first professional job, my the two Black folks that I came in with, we were new RDs together. It was like there was three of us and then the one white homie, and we was rolling tough. And I was like, man, that's my crew, right? I was like, man, they help the brother get through. You
Yeah.
know, when you experiencing stuff that's wild and people not understand, because I can be different. I recognize I am not always all the things of like that type A, get it how it goes type of thing that gets
Uh,
easily
we,
celebrated.
we are encompass the in spectrum of the diaspora of Blackness. Like
That's very true.
there's no uh one size fits all. We are
Yeah,
unique, and that is the way God made us. Like,
that's real. But right, but like you said, in educational settings though, there's certain things that get hit, and I'd be like, bro, what's happening? And they're like, hey, Jordan is cool. Just do you, do you, do you. I'm like, all right, all right, all right. And so yeah, I gotta acknowledge them. And that's also makes me think of, and I think it kind of ties back, getting brain jumping around.
mm-hmm,
What happens as you elevate though, right? RD, I was on a staff of 10.
mm-hmm,
Now I'm the director. It's me and my two grads, one staff person. And then sometimes
mm-hmm.
keep getting further and further, and it's less and less of you. I think of when I think of Ms. Johnson, right?
Yeah,
Or we'll talk about K through. When I talk about high school, the vice president. Who else is out there like that for you to be your homie, to have you like that, and how important it is to have that network, I guess, right? Or
yeah.
whatever. Like that kind of thing happens too, you know. Like,
Yeah. I think about that too. Like we think about, I'm just thinking about like when we think about going to conferences,
mhm.
there's a bunch of us starting out. There's a bunch of us we kicking it, we starting out, we having a great time, we're talking about our experiences,
Mhm.
and there's not a lot of us now, right?
Right.
After this last pandemic, we have in higher education, probably also through K through 12, like
Probably.
um and we have understood that through this pandemic, through the violence on Black and brown bodies,
Mhm.
um, that higher education don't care about us in the ways that we assumed that they did.
Mhm.
And maybe that was my assumption, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it's not to say that they didn't care, but the system itself
Couldn't
was
care for
not
you in the way.
conducive to care for Black people in that way.
Yeah.
Not the individual people that took care of you and rocked with you and was a part of your crew and part of your community. I'm talking
People.
about the system alone. We have
Yeah.
we have highlighted all the shit in these
Hmm.
last 2 years that higher
Yeah.
education has not dealt with,
Hmm. Exactly.
and
Exactly.
how it does not take care of its Black professionals
Yeah.
and its Black students, and how that shows up. Um, and we could say that it's always been there, but I think it's amplified.
Oh yeah.
Um,
It's front and center.
amplified.
Yeah, it definitely was front and center. And it definitely, and also the thing was like, are you going to make the decision to do the side of care? Because really, if you don't, there's nothing else that's going, like, what else can happen, right? Like, we're all confronted with, like, this is a traumatic thing that we're going through. This is a life shifting, altering thing that is going on with how we're responding to this pandemic and everything, and how we're responding to this violence and stuff that is happening. What are you going to do? Plain and simple, what are you going to do? You ask the question, and then you watch your institutions, and they go.
Yeah.
Some of them say, "Okay, we'll do this." And some of them say, "We'll do nothing." Some of them say, "We'll wait until so and so does this, so we can act like it was okay to do it." And you like, and see, and we be watching. We be
Yes.
watching,
You were
you
watching.
finally watching, and you like, "Oh, you moving different." Oh, okay.
Yes.
Or you like, "Oh, this office gets, the plexiglass screens and dividers real quick, but ain't
Mhm.
nothing coming over this way." I see
Yes.
you. I see you. Okay.
It's
Okay.
the lack of doing something that
Mhm.
irritated me. Like first
Like the nothing.
the nothing, the nothingness. Like that people like 2020 was
Wow.
hard.
Wild.
I think 2020 was hard, being Black, seeing Black bodies being killed, going through the pandemic. Like it was hard, and most institutions did nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
They did nothing, and they waited for their peers to say something, and they re jargon that information, but they never talked to their students. They never
Mhm.
talked to their administrators. They didn't do any. Still to this day, some of these institutions have not done anything.
Not done a thing. Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's real. That's
Not
that's that's
done
hella
a
real.
damn thing. And what's funny to me is sometimes they put out this letter to like the people, or like like what is that? Like
Right.
they put out a letter to the people and the students about all the things, and
Yeah.
like, but what have you done? Like
Yeah. No,
first
that's real.
you put out this letter, but did you ask us what we needed?
Yep. That's the weird. All right, and that's the funny part. For not funny. You use the word funny.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you, but that's the thing that hit with me with all this, right? Because now, right, I'm like pseudo in that space of, can you read this? Can you help with language type of thing, right? And I'm like,
Mhm.
can we not? But then at the same time, you've got all the groups who are like, you ain't said nothing. I'm like, here we go. And so I remember one of those conversations for me, I was like, look, we won't for this second, but what we will do is let's do these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like events, moments showing up in these different spaces. What you can write, openly say, I recognize that we're, whatever type of space.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to be safe. I want you to be safe, but I also want you to use your voice. Do that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that in some different spaces. And then let's see us around in these different spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It won't be all of us, but if it's different figures and different folks and you mean it and you showing up,
Yeah.
that's gonna do way more than us trying to figure out these 4 and 5 paragraphs. Right? Like
Right.
it's gonna do way more. And then we can write the one as like a culminating like little Joan, like blah 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 blah. Still want to remind you, right?
Yeah.
But like you said, we got to do some things, because if
Yeah.
we don't do anything prior to us saying something,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, here they go with that bull stuff again. But when you write the letter and like, yo, I saw homie at the protest, I
Yep.
saw so and so in the city council meeting that we were having,
Yeah.
I heard them respond to blase blase, or shorty got fired for
Yes.
right, like
For
they
speaking
like
up, right?
right, and then you like, oh, they thought about it, you know what I mean?
I
Okay, it's a
think
little different.
I think it's also which you be working in the space that you're in. There's a lot of times where institutions rely on your space to do something, and only your space. Only the cultural centers. We're gonna push it to the cultural centers to do something.
Right,
That's your job. No,
right,
institutional racism and climate.
right.
That's all your
I
job.
didn't put that poster up. That was your
Right.
students.
Like when did it become that the people that only talk about race and injustice and equity and equality is only the cultural centers on campus?
Right. Well, yeah. Remember, we in these, especially in these R1 type spaces for me, right? Like
Same.
positivism and this absolute truth is free of all these other things. It's in the numbers and blah 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 blah.
Okay,
It becomes.
PhD. Okay.
But I'm just saying, it comes a part of the logics, right? It becomes a part of
Yeah.
the logic, and it becomes a part of how you're making sense of how folks making the decisions are making sense of what's going on and around. And then you got some of us who are like, no, that's not it, or that's not the only it, or actually, oh,
Yeah,
if we want to rely on the numbers, did you even ask the right question to get numbers that can show you what we talking about?
absolutely.
How
And
did
who's taking those surveys? Let's go
yeah,
back. Like,
all of those pieces, right? And that's a piece of it. It's also wild for me being at a state institution, right? So like, you're, as much as it's your own institution, it's also what's going on
in the state,
in
yeah,
the
and
state,
that
right?
affects you.
And I'm like, dang, here I am. Which then goes back to like, what's it mean to be a Black educator? It means to be divisive at times, right?
Ooh.
Or yeah, it means that you'll be divisive because just one, because you're there. It also means to be like, what's the word I'm looking for? You gotta be, you gotta adapt, you gotta be nimble, right? You gotta be able to move and shake how you need to, right? I don't, the other terms aren't coming from me, but I think of, here you go. I told you this was gonna come up, this quote.
Okay.
I told
Okay.
you the quote was gonna come up. So when I started this newest job,
Mm-hmm.
my quote was a James Baldwin quote, and it was, "The purpose of art is to lay bare the questions that have been hidden by the answers." And that was my major focus. I was like, how do we use creativity to ask these right questions? This new phase that I'm on now is Laron Bennett, or Laron Bennett Jr. quote. That's like, essentially, to be an educator in an oppressive system, you're either revolutionary or you're an oppressor. And
Mm.
like, in this time, I'm like, here we go. Am I going to be a revolutionary, or am I going to be an oppressor? It's really that simple to me. When I come into a scenario and I'm dealing with it, will this choice, will this action be on the side of some type of revolutionary progress, or will this do more to oppress? And like, of course, tons of gray area, all or whatever. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I go 1, 2.
Yeah.
That's where, if I'm gonna use a binary, 1-2, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's necessary now. That when I think of what it means to be a Black educator, it's necessary to let it be that clear, right? Am I gonna be a revolutionary? Am I gonna be an oppressor? Am I gonna allow this to happen this way? Or is it gonna go that way?
Yeah, I think that's hard, right? Because I also think about the energy to be a revolutionary, like
Yeah.
the the grit, the energy, the
Mhm.
resources, the threat to your position or
Yeah,
risk to
yeah.
your job that comes with that.
Word.
Like, and it's all in. If you're going to be all in, go all. Go home,
Yeah.
go hard or go home, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of labor that comes behind that.
Mm.
I find so this is something that my professor often says, and I have no idea where he gets it from.
Okay.
But we're going to quote Dr. Leonard Taylor.
Okay, let's go.
What hill are you going to die on?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So that being said, like, if you had to choose
Mm-hmm.
a battle, or you had to choose a statement, a mission, or something that you were standing on,
Mm-hmm.
what is it going to be? Right. And sometimes these things that can be our lesson, or they may be issues that we need to address, but they're not going to make this big change that I need to speak up. I may not speak up with all these little things, but this Hail Mary right here that is really going to dictate whether my students stay here on campus or
Mm-hmm.
have to leave, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's oftentimes I'm in that middle where I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what hill do I want to die on.
Yeah.
Because as a Black woman,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if I'm speaking up every single time on an issue, people stop listening.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I need to figure out what is the most important thing that's going to get the most resources,
Mm-hmm.
information, something for the students that I serve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And oftentimes I want to be a revolutionary,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to do those things. And there's a lot of times where I have to figure out what is the most important thing that is going to serve the most people that I take care of.
No, that's real. And I think to add to that is revolutionary work doesn't always need to happen at the space of where that particular thing is going on.
Yeah.
Right. Again, you got a whole summit that's coming up in November. It's a revolutionary type of act, in my opinion. Right. Like
Yeah.
that's one of those types of things. Those other educational spaces of like, what are the places, the spaces that you create, um, if this classroom, if this, whatever center or whatever is not being what it could be for you,
Mm-hmm.
but you create it elsewhere
Yeah.
while you're dealing with what you need to deal with to do this. Because also, right, I don't know why, but I picked up Sun Tzu Art of War again. Right. But everything, some things, are slow, take a little bit of time. You figure out what's the strategy, right?
The
Like,
best strategy. And I
yeah.
love working within the system. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
there's something
To,
about disrupting a system that you know it thoroughly, like in
yeah.
the ins and outs. So when you
Yeah.
dismantle it, you shut that shit all the way down.
Yeah.
Like, there's something about that makes me just like, it makes me giddy,
That's
right?
so funny. That's funny. See, I never have that patience. I'm always like, nah, bro.
Oh, I'm patient.
I need like a you on my side to be like, Jordan, wait. You be like, let it marinate, let it bubble. It's cool. It's cool. I'm like, nah, son, nah, son. But, and also my Jasmine always tell me like, I don't like people telling me no. And because I also don't believe that you really have a reason that you could tell me no. And
Yeah.
maybe it's Leo season, so I'm in full force right now. But yes,
Oh, goodness.
But I'm like, when have I ever been wrong? So and I feel like I act that way in student affairs, in my jobs, in my work too. Is like,
Yeah.
this ain't wrong. But to that point, sometimes you gotta be patient. Yes,
Yeah.
everything can't happen all the time. Like, or everything can't happen in that moment. Some things have their
Yeah.
times,
But
right?
I often work in back channels
Yeah.
where maybe the administration doesn't know what
Mhm.
I'm doing or who I'm talking to and
Yeah.
who I'm stepping to or what
Yeah.
students am I giving the information and knowledge to so they can do
Yeah.
petitions and walks and just different things like that.
Yeah.
I love it's
Hmm.
probably the worst thing that people realize once they hire me.
Oh,
I
you that one.
I love it.
You that one. They're gonna be in a meeting on the third floor of such and such building. You might want to go. You might want to go over there. Let your detour go that way. You that type. I see yeah, no, I feel you.
But I do it. I definitely I've mastered doing it with grace. I've
Yeah.
mastered doing it with care and you know I tell people I speak white people very well, right?
Yeah.
So I do it with the level of they don't know it's coming when it came.
When it's coming. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny. So on another side too, that I'm thinking of with these like back channels, these other spaces, it's
Hmm.
like I definitely, one of the things that I like to do, or one of the things that I find myself doing, is when I see my students or other people creating that pocket and
Hmm.
that space for them, I'm quiet, right? Because I think another piece of being an educator is knowing that everything ain't for everybody. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
you ain't gotta tell the family business everywhere. So like there's like there was a big group of students that were in my college who were all a part of some like networks creating some amazing events, some things, some like, community support and things for each other. And
Mm.
I was like, we ain't gotta talk about that. Let me know what you need though. I'm gonna get what I can to give
Mm.
you what you need. But just keep that on the low. This is us. This is, or actually not this is us. This is you. This is
Yeah.
your thing. Do that. Keep doing
Yeah.
that. Right. I want you to think about sustainability. I want you to think about how do you pass on to the next person to help lead it, right?
Yeah.
So that you can take your break and then re-step in and whatnot, right? But sometimes it comes to like, sometimes we just gotta be a little bit more quiet. Everything doesn't need to be the official group, club, something like that,
Yeah.
right? It's just that like, nah, there's this group of 20 or so people who are doing
We
what
just
they
got
need to do
together.
for
We had
each other.
snacks. Like we had
Yeah.
a great conversation.
Yeah, they even created a whole like resource library and things, right? Like,
Mhm.
cool, nah, do your thing. You
Because
ain't gotta.
sometimes once it gets into this structured system, then they start
For everybody, right?
they advertise it to the people that are doing diversity work and these are some of the things that are happening on our campus and things and they take credit for it, something they didn't do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. No, like this started with these young people where like y'all
Yeah,
weren't
they
answering it,
did
so they
that.
did it. Let them do it.
Let
Yep.
them do it.
Let
Yeah,
them do it.
sometimes you don't need a structure and a name to it for us to be able to create and find community and pour
Yep.
into one another, and I agree with
Yep.
that.
And then so what you do is go create whatever extra thing, but don't put all these stipulations on it so that I can pass this stuff over to them that way when I need to. That's what
Yeah.
my work will be, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. So if you wanted to leave something to Black educators that are coming in, they are navigating this higher education, this world, this new normal, what would you leave them?
Mm. I be reflecting too much,
Yeah.
so it's gonna take me a second. Okay. So yeah, I'll be true to the creator in me. I would say keep a notebook or a sketchbook.
Mm.
And what you do in that notebook or your sketchbook is, if you can, it's not daily, at least weekly, right? At minimum, please weekly. But I say as close to daily as possible. Write down, sketch down, take pictures and collage down those moments and those things that bring you like that joy, bring you the healing, right? Motivate you into that action, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that collection is, those those quotes, like we just had some quotes from some people, right? Those book titles, those videos, those conversations with students, right? That moment that you just was walking across campus and the light was shining off of something was beautiful and you took a picture and you put it, and just remind you of like why you love being in this space.
Yeah.
Keep some type of collection like that. And I say that because there's moments when you're so tunnel visioned, right? And things are shaking you and things get dark, things get blurry, and you don't know what's going on. You feel rocked, right?
Yeah.
And then you can go to that and be like, this is where
This
this is where it's at for me, right?
Yeah.
I remember the last thing from my undergrad, I was like a leader for this group, and we used to make like little notes on napkins and give them to the student leaders, that the leaders we were training up. And so then those student leaders, when me and my co graduated, they gave us a lunch bag full of notes from them. Right. And I'm like, but for me, right, that was those moments when I was having those tough discussions. I'd be like, it's because of what this person right here was saying.
Yeah.
And then I started including that into my own practice. So yeah, the creator of me says, get a notebook, a sketchbook, something that you put those things down in. Because, not to, I'm long-winded sometimes, but there's a piece of like finding it does something for you. Figuring out how to put it down in a notebook does something for you. Recalling it does something for you. Adding things to it. All of those practices, those many moments in that practice does something to help you out. And I think all of that is important and powerful, especially when you are sometimes the person who's the only one. You're out in those, mad schools are in mad rural places.
Yeah.
And you be isolated and alone, or these small little schools and stuff. Sometimes where you're getting that first job at, right? Or that big school where you feel like, I don't know nothing that's out here, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you need that.
I think I would say that make sure that you take care of you. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be the only thing that matters to be able to come to this work, to be able to live in those truths, to be able to be in those special moments. Like, you have to take care of you. In whatever capacity, whether that is finding a therapist, whether that is finding your therapy through art, whether that is finding, your community. Like, do the work, because you need it. You definitely need it. And like to the blog, like those sick days, those sick days, take them as mental health days, take them as self-care days. You better take your sick days, because they don't pay you out.
They don't pay them out.
They don't pay you out when you leave the institution. You better take those sick days.
They don't pay them out.
They don't pay you out. So you take them as you need them and as you see fit, okay? Because that is how you're going to take care of yourself. Yeah. So yeah.
That's real.
All right. Well, it was lovely. See y'all soon. Peace.